Good evening, everyone. This open meeting of the Auburn Conservation Commission is being operated as a hybrid format under Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022. The public can join the meeting remotely by dialing on their telephone or smartphone 408-650-3123 and then using access code 942-845-549. Or you can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/942-845-549. So materials for tonight's meeting are posted on the town's website, and the public is encouraged to follow along using the agenda. My name is Michael Garland. I'm chairman of the Conservation Commission, and before we start, let me do a roll call of those members of the commission in town that are participating this evening. Tom Fallon.
Present.
Michelle Colross.
Present.
Chris Carey.
Present.
Jesse Averka.
Present.
All right, we do have a quorum. This meeting is also being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. I don't know if we'll have anyone joining us remotely this evening, but I guess we will find out. So the first item on tonight's agenda is a 7 p.m. public hearing. Michael Marinas of Insight Engineering, a notice of intent for property at 47 Rockland Road. Is there a motion to open?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in
Can
favor?
we open that technically without the?
Well, we'll go on the record.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It's a vote. Now, Mr. Averka, do you have something to tell us?
Yeah, so I spoke to the applicants earlier today and after the last meeting, since we didn't have a quorum and couldn't open, I thought that we were all, in understanding that we had to re-advertise and re-notify abutters, but apparently the abutter notices were not sent again. So I think that we need to wait until those are sent out again before we have any real discussion on this hearing. And I know they said that they're planning on getting them out either tomorrow or the day after, this week within that 10-day notice to have the hearing discussed on the 22nd, or next year.
All right, so they've made a request to continue to May 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Is there a motion to continue the public hearing for 47 Rockland
Can I-
Road to May 22nd at 7 p.m.?
Before we do that, is there anybody in the audience that's already here for that?
Well, I think are you here for that, ma'am?
Yeah.
Can you just state your name and your address, please?
I'd rather not, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
All right.
Is there anyone else here for 47 Rockland Road?
Okay.
All right. So anyway, I just requested a motion to continue the public hearing to May 22nd at 7 p.m.
I move that we move the meeting to the 22nd at 7 p.m.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Okay. Well, that took all of, actually 2 minutes. Before we get to the 7:05 public hearing, we have some other matters on our agenda. What I will do is I'm going to take them out of order. We have had a number of complaints over the last several months over runoff and erosion and sedimentation at 50 and 190 Washington Street. I think the most recent occurrence was back about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is after we had issued an enforcement order and we were advised by the applicant that they had taken steps to mitigate sedimentation and runoff. The pictures that are attached, and you have them in your packet, clearly show that whatever steps were taken were insufficient. And I believe this will be the third enforcement order we're going to be issuing.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, see them just over the last year or so, I believe.
All right. So, and in fact, I would even say that
Here's some video.
that the conditions shown in the photographs that were taken on April 12th are even actually worse than what we had seen previously. So I'm not sure what the developer is doing or the site manager is doing to mitigate, but they're not doing a good enough job. So is there a motion to issue an enforcement order?
Make a motion, we issue an enforcement order.
All right, is there a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
A vote. Oh, hi, Megan, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, let the record,
I am.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Langley is also joining us. Okay.
It's just.
Yeah. The next item on our agenda is the 7:05 public hearing. Dr. Saeed M. Ali Tahir, a notice of intent for property at 0 Cemetery Road to convert the lot into a cemetery. Is there a motion open?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It's a vote. Is there someone here on behalf of Dr. Tahir?
This crew back here, I'll open up, I don't know how we present, or is there a way to do anything?
Well, usually someone brings an easel, but, okay.
Yeah. It's in the house.
And the Alfie.
Is there a preferred location to set up over here, or?
Where are we?
I think right where you are is fine.
That was pretty quick. All right, well, actually, I won't go through this now. My name's Todd Curtin. I work for Ty and Bond. I'm a licensed site professional. I'm on board with our client Saeed because the site has contamination. It's for folks that understand, the MCP is the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. It's considered a release site. A little background for the property, that's what I want to at least go through. On my side is that the property was used, from what we understand, for property records and aerial photographs from early 1960s-ish to 1980s as a dump, construction and debris dump area. You can see as over time, things grew in. So it's mostly vegetated now and a lot of tree growth since that time. It was actually used by the property owner that's to the north, that owned both properties in a sense, and used it for that time to basically bring C&D type material in. So our client bought the property in June 2021. And ended up finding out through some test pit work and some soil sampling that he had an issue in soils.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
There was no 21E assessment done before the purchase?
no.
Okay. Presume there's been a 21E assessment since?
We are in it, yes.
Okay.
We're in that world.
Can you describe the types of materials or contaminants that you found at the property?
So it's lead is the driver, lead and soil. It's typical of dumps like this. There's other heavy metals. There's polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs is an acronym. Typical. This is typically what you find. Low levels of PCBs. Just-
Pressure-treated lumber, any arsenic?
we have arsenic. It's not screaming high. The one that's really screaming high is lead. It definitely is a lead. There is evidence, there's been a couple poles, utility poles found in the debris, but it's mostly glass, brick, and what else do we find as far as the test? But there's other oddball things that you see. Wire, metal, not really evidence of, I don't know if anyone here knows history otherwise. It didn't seem to serve as a burn area. It was just dumped and then left.
What about groundwater?
So groundwater impacts, for the most part, are not an issue. We do have one well in the center of the site that had a hit of what's called chlorinated VOC, a volatile organic compound. We've actually put a deeper well in there to see if it traveled. We have 3 wells along the perimeter, both north and south and to the east. East is down gradient towards the roadway, and it's non-detect. We do have private wells to the north and to the south at those residences. We sampled one that got access to 20 Cemetery Road. nothing, no detects. So groundwater is sort of a little bit localized as an issue on site, and that's it at this point. The other contaminants, the lead and all the metals and pHs, they don't travel well in groundwater, and we're not seeing them in groundwater. Under the MCP, to not dive too deep into it, but there are standards that you compare to in groundwater relative to potential surface water impacts. And we're well below those numbers. So really the only issue that we have is those chlorinated VOCs. And that's about what's called the GW1 standard. That's because we're next to a private well. So the groundwater issue, it's been sampled at least 4 times. We've been really focused on the chlorinated VOC more recently. We put that deeper well into bedrock on the site, and it was not non-detect, which is good, because that's the kind of contaminant that can move around a little bit going downward. But again, these levels are just above the standard, so it's not screaming high. So, and that does sort of fit what you would see at these kind of properties, unless they were dumping other stuff that was more chemical based or something that could have been more harmful, if you will. We didn't find in the test pits, we've done 15 test pits. Our client had another consultant do some test pits prior to us. We focused our test pits all in the debris area. We've delineated where that debris is. It covers about 4 acres of the site of that area. It doesn't go all the way out. I'm not familiar with it. Oh yeah, sorry, here we go. I know this doesn't show it, but in the roadways here, the debris is mostly in this area, and then it keeps going up the slope, and it just pinches out and goes away. So with that said, where we're at MCP World is, for me, is phase 2 comprehensive site assessment. We've already submitted something to Mass DEP that got us almost there, but we had this groundwater issue. And then we would get into phase 3 remedial evaluations, alternatives. And basically for a property like this that comes up in dumping grounds or anything like that, there's very little we can do other than cap it, because to take it all out and to dispose of all that material is, tens and tens of millions of dollars, basically, unfortunately. Because I think it's about 60,000 cubic yards if we did the calculations right. We just sort of did an average over that 4.2 acres of like 6 or 8 feet of debris, and that works out to be about 60,000 cubic yards, somewhere roughly. So to take that all back out and bring it to another home,
So are you,
it's not feasible.
I guess in that case, are you gonna remove some of the materials or the most?
We're looking to shape and grade, basically, and consolidate. Very little consolidation needed, but just a little bit of movement, and then bring up grades, and then and create a plateau, and I'm getting more into design. My team here is Seth Taylor, they're wetland scientists, and Dennis Moran did the design work with our team, so they can speak more to that. I just really focused on, for me at least, I could speak better to the MCP issues for the site.
Are you gonna bring material on site, clean fill?
We are bringing material on. We're bringing the raised grades on the lower levels. We're looking to bring in what's called less than RCS1 soil under similar soil provision. It's like non-regulated soil that you have low levels of contaminants. The reason being that will help a little bit with cost implications, because it's a huge cost even just to cap this site.
Right.
And we need to raise the grades a decent amount, as you'll see on the other plans. The change in grades where it plateaus is over 20 feet. To bring it so you can create the cemetery plot area. The cemetery plot area is partially within the area where the debris is at depth, but we're gonna have such a huge separation, and we're gonna have clean soils at the top where the plots are. So it's not, anything you have to have for disturbance. And the soils that we're bringing in, again, are unregulated, and it's not like, there's any real harm or scare with them, but there's a need to get rid of some of that kind of soil in some urban environments, to find a happy home for it, and this seems like a good candidate for it. Any other questions on the site assessment side, or?
Well, I have a number of questions. Have we heard from DEP on this, Jesse?
I am not aware of a file number being issued. I don't think you guys have one, right?
We don't have one. Central region's taking 4 to 5 weeks
Yeah.
to issue a file number.
Yeah,
And that's
Yeah,
across the
I mean-
they've been tied up
It
lately.
may not shock you that this hearing would be continued.
I didn't know it was 4 or 5 weeks.
I'd like to see what you've submitted to DEP on your contingency plan and where you're gonna do not only your analysis, but I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of material there that, you know, is not terrific, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just, we're improving things by capping, basically, you know, and then not having it, you know, be at near or at the surface. And ultimately, there will be a deed restriction placed on the property under those regulations, under Mass MCP regulations. And it won't, you know, the use of the cemetery will meet what you would have no problems with that. It would just be if you disturb the cap and or get down to those soils again and disturb them, you have to have an LSP on board. That's all. So
So if I were to go out to the site tomorrow, what are the current conditions? Is it a wooded lot? Is it shrubs?
it is overgrown, mounded like this, going up the hill. A lot of boulders that
Okay.
they pushed around to make this all work.
Uh-huh.
You can see a little bit in this time of year with the growth, it's starting to fill in the lower stuff. But you can see things sticking out of the side slope in some areas as you go up the hill, off the roadway. But for the most part, it's just not, you know, it undulates or whatever as you look up to the side, up the hill.
Okay.
That's really all you see. It's very overgrown.
Okay. I mean, can we walk the site?
You can. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's actually an access point that actually starts in the neighboring property. That used to be probably part of the old operations years and years ago, 40 years ago. That we used for the excavator that we had access point to. And that area is a little bit cleared as you go up. It's probably the only area that doesn't have heavy tree growth.
Okay.
But you definitely walk it. Yes.
Okay.
Is that still on Cemetery Road, or is it?
It's off of Cemetery, yeah, you're coming on Cemetery Road, and it's actually, you can see a marker for the cemetery to the east, and just beyond that, there's actually, it's got a chain going across it, so it
Okay.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
So the cemetery on the east is the Hebrew cemetery, correct?
Yes,
All right. Well, obviously, we don't have a file number, so that's number one. Secondly, I would imagine DEP is going to have some comments on this filing, not to say nothing of the MCP filings that you've already done.
there has been discussions with the Bureau of Wayside Cleanup folks back earlier last summer, just trying to get some of their general feel for how we can bring in some soil to help with the capping situation there. So we met with a group of folks, both from Central Region and one person from Boston. Nothing really, the submittal that we made to Mass DEP makes mention of that, but right now we're just focusing on bringing in unregulated soils to help with their raising and grading clean soil. It makes it an easier project that way.
How many cubic yards are you talking about?
We're still looking at that a little bit, but it's a substantial volume to raise those grades. You know, it's getting up to upwards of 100,000 cubic yards. Yeah, but there's a need for a cap. If this wasn't even the cemetery, the volume, which I don't have off the top of my head, just to cap it, regrade it, and just cap it with a 2 or 3 foot cap, you know, it's pretty substantial.
Sure.
Yeah, no matter what, 4 acres.
No, I get it. I
Yeah.
understand.
I have questions.
Go ahead, please.
All right. So you said that this would be better for the environment, but if you're constantly digging however far you need to dig down in order to bury somebody, and you're mixing it with unregulated, okay, no?
We'd be well up above, and I apologize, I don't know if I can flip this one over. Where the cemetery will be, they won't, the plots, just thinking of like an 8-foot depth that's all gonna be clean soil.
Okay,
So we're well above where the debris soil is. In fact, it's like 25 feet or more in the highest part of the plateau, and then we come down our slope. So there would be no disturbance of the material. In fact, that would be part of the deed restriction, that there is no disturbance of that very dirty soil, if you will. So that would not be
the stuff that
touched.
you're bringing in is kind of not, is
Oh,
unregulated.
that stuff, yeah,
soil
even
as well.
that goes on top of, just to start raising grades in the area we need, that wouldn't even be touched by the plots either. Yeah, it's not, like, they wouldn't be digging that, it would be 8 feet of clean, you know, virgin native soil that would come and be at the
Okay,
cemetery level.
all right. Okay. But if it's not impacting at this point, if the soils aren't impacting the waterways at this point, or the wells at this point, how is it helping?
It's just creating less exposure, potential exposure that you don't have it at the surface or close to it, and more importantly, our biggest factor that our clients in the situation is, this is an open release site now, and he can't walk away.
Okay.
He's got to address his MCP or issues that are associated with the release. So you have to be able to close it out with what's called a permanent solution, you have to do something that prevents risk under current or future use. And even if it was just an empty land, like nobody was going to use it for a cemetery, you'd have to put something on top, because you could always have trespassers, you could always have people doing whatever.
Okay. Is anyone available this weekend?
I am.
Okay, so maybe we'll take a walk on Saturday.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I have just a
Megan, go
few
ahead,
quick questions.
please.
So it's heavily vegetated right now, you said, right?
Yes.
So what's like the timeline? You clear the vegetation and then you like immediately put the new, like the clean fill on top, or like how long is there the potential for there to be like that exposed, more toxic soil?
Yeah, we would put cleaner fill, just to try to cap the existing contaminated soils, and then we start bringing our soils to raise the grades, which aren't a real issue. You would just have that protective layer, if you will, to have for that short-term interval as we start raising the grades and making, if there's a roadway that you can see on the plans, and, there's the work that goes into the final details at the surface that's created. So once we get past that initial grading and shaping, because we do want to shape it a little bit, and there are a lot of boulders, you'll see them out there, and sort of try to make it a little bit more of this is why I envision it. Dennis could probably speak more. But, yeah.
If you don't mind.
Please.
Dennis Bray with Ty Bond, and I'm going to lead on Seth in a few minutes. Sorry. So obviously this is our first time in a public hearing in front of the town. And just to give everybody a kind of an overview, kind of take a step back, not that we're not listening to your concerns. We are envisioning going, or we're aware that in addition to the state permits, we have to go in front of the planning board, zoning board, board of health, board of selectmen. We've had initial conversations just to somewhat get people aware of the project. As Todd mentioned, that, the goal of the project is a contaminated site in the community. Looking at the greater picture is to help remediate it, help eliminate the pollution leaving the site, cap that site, and then indefinitely it's going to be deeded, that an AUL probably for that, and a beneficial reuse as a cemetery, that given the proximity to the other the uses in the area, right? This cemetery road, there's like 3 other cemeteries in the direct vicinity. So, and the site has historically been used as a dumping ground. They're aware of it. Unfortunately, Dr. Saeed, I'll say, inherited this problem, and he's looking to not only correct the environmental issues, but also reuse it for the community as well. So, as Todd mentioned, and the reason why we're here in front of the commission tonight is for the impacts to the buffer. So unfortunately, we weren't able to delineate the wetland that's directly east, east of the property, because we weren't allowed access. There is visually a wetland out there if you go out there, or when you're at.
Why weren't you allowed access?
The property owner would not allow us on it.
And who's that?
We there's an initial reach out. We haven't spoken to them to get that permit. We didn't want to walk on their property, basically.
Okay,
But for the most part, we're not disturbing or doing anything in
I
there.
understand.
So,
All right,
So then
So we need to be aware.
we were able to, obviously from the road.
part of the cemetery, I'm sorry, yeah, I think it's their ownership
okay,
group, yeah.
all right.
So we were able to observe the wetland. We were got the information off Mass Mapper, Mass GIS website, and then Seth was able to modify that based on. And I'm not going to speak for you. And then I'm going to stop talking so you can kind of present the impacts of the buffer zone, both the state level and the local jurisdiction. But so there's some permanent impacts on the buffer to help remediate the site, to, again, prevent pollution and contamination from leaving the site, and to allow for the capping of that material, or the waste material on site. And then, in addition to that, there's a full engineering design in the drawings, or in the package of, when you have a chance to look at them.
Right.
We also have a full stormwater report that complies with local regulations as well as the state regs, that we anticipate getting peer reviewed at some point. We actually do work with the town's peer reviewer quite a bit, so.
Yeah, I anticipate that will happen here.
So we expect that, and anticipate that coming, after we get a file number and whatever that comes. We're looking forward to what their comments are and try to address them and work with them to
Okay.
kind of move that forward. Seth, did you want to talk about the impacts of the buffers and?
Well, that one question, I just wanted to ask the woman that asked, one of the other members, right?
Megan?
As far as, how to, did you envision that would be that way, Dennis? That when we clear the land, I think that's the current search, yes, because you'll see how much of the tree vegetation's there. And then we clear it through and then start working our way up.
Sure, from like a starting day one to like full length of the project, the goal is, after initial pre-construction meetings with the commission, the agent, remove the vegetation. A lot of that I would expect to be chipped on site and used as erosion control material. There's a lot of wooded vegetation. Just lost our TV. So, there's a lot of invasives on site that Seth could talk to. Other than knowing they're invasive, that's about the limit of my ability. And construction of a temporary access road, bring materials in as they're available to help cap the site, bring the site up to grade, to allow for the future reuse, and then from that, as Todd mentioned, the RCS1 soils, bring the site up with clean material so that when the site is excavated down for burials, there'll be clean material. We're not opening the site back up with contaminated material and then placing you're reusing the site as grades. Proposed access road up to the top of the plateau area. When you go out on the site, you'll see it's very steep. There's a very large grade differential from the roadway. But the roadway is moderately graded. It's steeper, but allows for access for fire emergency with the turnaround parking, as well as drainage to both contain and treat stormwater. There's a couple stormwater detention basins, and then another basin off to the south. And then the pre and the post flows from a stormwater perspective. It's actually, if you dive into the report, it's an appendix. I think it's appendix F. But that actually shows a reduction in runoff based on the detention and the change in ground cover. And I know I'm talking really fast, kind of very.
It's okay.
But,
Sorry.
That's for Seth to kind of talk about the impacts we anticipate in the buffer.
Right, hi, so my name's Taylor Tyne Bond, I'm a professional wetland scientist. What I wanted to talk about in particular is, this is a complex site. But within, so this wetland's pretty clear as day to be able to delineate just by eyesight. So we did it conservatively where we pushed it as far up to the roadway to where it was clear that it came up into gravel. So it's, while we weren't able to go out there and delineate it, it's a pretty legit delineation. And so we based our buffers off of that to, WPA over pilot jurisdiction. There's no work within the 25 foot at all. Within the 50 foot, there's a little bit amount of work. There's just the edge, there's a detention pond, a third of a detention pond, which will be lined underneath so that that water will not infiltrate into the ground. It's a true detention basin where it will sit and, either evaporate or during storm events, or, come over, metered out, and then go into an existing culvert which goes underneath Cemetery Road, which won't be modified. That pipe will remain as it is. It can handle the stormwater that we have designed it to that.
Okay.
So within the 50 to 100 is where the impacts will be. This will require vegetation clearing. It's a mid-successional red maple forest continuing off from the swamp from the east. So it'll have some wildlife impact from loss of those specific trees, but it's not the entirety of everything. It is literally just you know, this area right in here where that tree thing will be impact buffer zone. And the reason for that is because this requires grading. Together with the whole project and for the stormwater to be contained and moved properly and to have that detention time for the stormwater to run off, as Dennis said, at a lower rate, at a lower total volume than it currently exists. And so, right now, this originally, when this was in active use, this was all cleared. So the vegetation that has returned is just, you know, natural infill, natural ingrowth. I don't think it'll have a ton of habitat impact. It's a small area, but it's necessary to achieve the goals of the grading of the stormwater filtration, of the stormwater conveyance for this. And so of the whole site, of all that's happening, just this strip is truly within jurisdiction. Now it's a project as a whole, but I just wanted to make sure that that was clearly marked out, and you know, you guys just clearly saw it.
We didn't, unfortunately, not that, it's just for FYI, it's just, you see the aerials that were done, historic aerials in the 80s, and you can see how much clear land they had there. And you actually see in one of, I think it's in the 70s, you can see mounds. So you can see the activity that was going on at that time when they were bringing stuff in and just dump. So,
And so one last thing is that there's a small area of the new roadway that's going in. That's right here, that's within that 1500.
Okay.
and there's no records in Auburn, I forgot to just mention, there's no dump records, it's unpermitted, it's undocumented. It's not under the solid waste program, if you're familiar with that, under the under Mass DEP. And it can be regulated under the MCP regulations versus the solid waste program because it's prior to 1970. So we fit that. And it's easier to deal with in some ways under the MCP than it is under the solid waste program.
So do you have meetings scheduled with the planning board and the selectmen?
We were, there was some talk of last summer and the client had met with some folks here in the town, and the order that was given to us that made most sense is to go through Conservation Commission first.
Right.
We're doing it in tandem. We have a lot of the planning board submittal and the ZBA coming and ready to go through, and we understand that the stormwater report's got a third-party review, so we're actually curious on the schedule from your end. Besides, I didn't realize that Mass DEP number is that delayed. That's a big one.
And that raises another question too, because is there a possibility we won't get a DEP number in, by the time of the May 22nd hearing?
Yeah, I think that's very possible. I'm not
So-
sure when exactly you guys submitted.
Well,
to-
by the time we go back in
2
2
weeks
weeks,
ago.
that'll be 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's certainly a chance. I mean, even if it comes in the day of, we can still, yeah.
We've, I mean, there have been times when we've actually waited longer to get a DEP number. So what I was going to suggest is this. Continue the public hearing to May 22nd, and in the event we don't get a DEP file number, we can just continue it to the first meeting in June.
And, over the butters notifications, like I heard earlier, how do we do that?
No, this has been open, so this is okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a weird circumstance with the other one.
Okay.
So are there any other questions from the board?
Yes. Are there any plans in the notice of intent for like ongoing water quality monitoring, either during the construction period or after, surface water or groundwater?
There'll be a SWIP needed.
Yeah, so the disturbance is greater than the requirements for a typical SWIP, and so there'll be an ENOI file. There is a maintenance plan in the stormwater report. It's one of the last couple pages. So there will, after any large rain event, and at least weekly, there will be on-site monitoring. If it's, third party to the town or for the engineer of record, that obviously hasn't been determined yet. And all that information can be forwarded off to the community as well for their records. As far as groundwater monitoring itself, that wouldn't be part of like a traditional stormwater report. It may be a requirement through the DEP, but I'll talk to you.
No additional. We may do a little bit more just to checked to see if that we've seen the fluctuations, and we have a pretty good sense of what's in groundwater. In the groundwater table in relationship to, the site, just so you know, as far as, we have one well that's closest to the road, you'll be able to see the PVC sticking out of the ground, it doesn't have a standpipe on it. Groundwater,
Is anyone using that well?
no, these are groundwater monitoring wells.
Okay.
Yeah, it's strictly for assessment purposes. Yeah,
Gotcha.
They were installed beginning in sometime in 2021 or 22. 4 of them were by another consultant, and then we just installed a deeper well. So they're purely for that purpose.
Okay.
But just in that area, if you walk along the roadway, you will probably see the PVC standpipe, and we do show them on our plans because it's an existing survey. So if you do walk the property, you may find the other ones. But
Okay.
on the shallowest side and the lowest point of the site, the groundwater is about 5 feet below grade at that location. And as you move up the slope, you're talking 18 feet, somewhere in that range.
Got it.
And you'll
So does that-
as you walk up the hill too.
Megan, you have something else?
That maintenance plan, does that go, the monitoring part of that, does that continue after the completion of construction, or like when does that end?
For which, for specific to stormwater, so that, I guess there's almost 2 phases of this project. There is the construction and capping of the site. And that would have specific stormwater requirements that are very different than the traditional ongoing maintenance of, once the site is capped, it's being actively used as a cemetery. The basins would have to be monitored from a traditional stormwater perspective, similar to any other project in the community.
Right.
That documentation is for a post-construction final closeout is included in the stormwater report. But we would anticipate working with the commission to develop construction period, stormwater controls, and we can certainly elaborate on those if needed. And that would include traditional silt sock, berms, fence, temporary sedimentation basins, depending on how the contractor is placing material. There's, as Tom mentioned, a significant amount of fill. So it is possible to grade this so that the stormwater runs internal to itself, internal to the site. It's somewhat of a means and methods. Not that we wouldn't expect like the commission or even the engineer of record to be concerned about that, but
Yeah, just
it's just keep it in control. And it's an ongoing issue, and a lot of times, from my experience on like larger landfill projects, this will be completed in phases just to limit the disturbance. Construction of the access road, get that roadway in there, stabilize that site, get hydroseed, a bonded fiber matrix put down, stabilize that, get that controlled, and then start working internal. The more area you have disturbed, the harder it is to control,
Mhm.
especially given the size. 4 acres, that's a decent amount of area.
When would you propose to start?
As soon as all the permits are in, I think,
Yeah, and it's, obviously it's not tomorrow, it's not May, June, it's,
But, I mean, that's also relying on DEP to also be satisfied with the MCP analysis too.
Yeah, we will probably put in front of them, it's a privatized program, so they don't have to chime in, they can, so, there has been that open discussion. We certainly don't want to start this with them having any concerns, up front. Everything that we focus on is on our client's property. There's a little history probably to the north because that property is part of it too, in the sense of what they did back then. But that's not the issue that he bought, so whatever's on theirs, they have their own concerns, but they don't have anything that's open on it because they're not out there sampling soils, they're digging to see. I think it just overlaps a little bit, but overall, so I think we anticipate having that open discussion as we make submittals. Under the MCP, what's next is what's called a Phase 2 Comprehensive Site Assessment, Phase 3 Remedial Alternative Evaluation, and then once we get through that and just select the alternative, which is what we're looking at, then there's a Phase 4 Remedy Implementation Plan. It's a Phase 4 RIP, and that's all those steps we can touch base, at the point of time with. We've talked to Kevin Dowse. I think he's a resident in Auburn, or he used to. He has a tie into Auburn. He's at the Central Region and Bureau of Site Cleanup. He met with us, so he's aware of it, and he actually remembers walking along there. He knows of the site. But it only helps us in this case, because we don't want to start this process and then have them have an issue with something that we're proposing. It's not really proposing, I mean, I put my stamp on it, it fits the regs, but they can see things a little differently, and you just want to make sure that they're not having an issue with it.
Right.
And to answer your other question about schedule, our next step is to get in front of the planning board relatively soon, so we're not operating in a vacuum.
Yeah.
We have a question out to the planner specific for special permits, very specific question. The final end use of the site as a cemetery needs a special permit with the village ZBA, so we don't want to, and the timeline of how long those are good for may not coincide with the construction and capping and remediation of the site, so we want to make sure that we're not getting a special permit and then not expire. Exactly.
Yes.
Not that we're trying to, not, we want everybody to be aware of the final end use, it's just we may have to get in front of the planning board, the Concom, get us a couple approvals, knowing that in the future we'll come back for a special permit after the site is capped, and I'll say we'll close the water out and stuff like that, knowing that once that is done, then we have to come back, hopefully in good faith that the special permit will get approved for the use of the cemetery, now that the site's remediated.
And there's a major land disturbance permit through DPW. I think we don't have to get in front of them, but they're gonna look at the stormwater report, review and approval with the Board of Health and Select Board. And, you know, we've definitely been in contact with the planning.
You're gonna get to know all the boards in Arvada.
Yeah.
We're expected to be here a few times.
Yeah, sure. All right, gentlemen, thank you for coming
Thank
in.
you.
So, we'll continue the public hearing to, May 22nd at 7:05 PM.
Did you just do that, or do you want
I'd
me
like a
to?
motion. I didn't think you were gonna say no.
Move to, yeah, I'll second it.
Well, you,
I have to do it, yeah.
yeah, make the motion.
I'll
and then-
make a motion to move, Saeed Ali Tahir to the 22nd at 7:05 PM.
Okay,
I'll second that.
is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, it's a vote.
Are we doing the 22nd?
Yeah,
Are we doing?
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
we'll do the 22nd.
Yes.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Yes,
Yeah.
hopefully,
Okay.
Oh,
Sounds good.
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
depending on DEP.
We'll ask them. Shoot them an email.
Yeah, it's, can't hurt.
I think I know what those two are here for, if you don't mind getting them out of the way.
Okay.
Well,
Well, I have a plan that, I believe that's all, that's Michael, right?
Jim,
Oh, Jim,
we're
okay.
talking about Jim Bates.
Sorry, Jim Bates.
No worries.
So he has this property here, and before he goes and spends a bunch of money on a plan, I was hoping you guys could get wetlands,
yeah.
and he was wondering if you guys thought that was feasible, or if it's just not something that's worth pursuing or putting money in to get a plan made.
Well, we don't give advisory opinions, I think, as you know. I'm not opposed to walking the site, you know? I mean, have you spoken to anyone professionally about this? Have you spoken to any engineers?
We have actually, and I'll introduce Teresa Wheeler. She's the owner of the property, so
Hi there. Okay,
we're actually considering purchasing the property from the Wheelers. And
okay,
this plan was actually done by an engineering company for these folks back in the late 90s, and it was, the subdivision was actually approved by the town of Auburn and went through.
by the planning board, right? When you say it was approved, or was it an A&R lot, do you know?
Well, it actually did get an approval from the, is it the ZBA that would have to do a special permit?
Yeah, or a variance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So-
But the problem is that that variance probably is expired, right?
Oh, of course, yes. we
Okay.
know that,
All right. Um,
And just as an additional backstory, it might help you understand. So I went back to these folks a few weeks ago and I explained what our hope was, understanding that many things had expired and that it was most likely not valid anymore. And they really just wanted to redraw the whole plan. But it doesn't really make sense to redraw the plan if the new regulations for wetlands and boundaries and buffers kind of preclude this plan now. We may be able to have them redraw the plan, but in a way that makes more sense for the town and conservation.
So this plan was drawn when in the 90s, like 30 years ago?
98, 99.
Okay, so we'll be, fair here and we'll say it's only like 27 or 28 years old.
Right.
Um,
The years go fast.
The problem is that, in our experience, wetlands are organic in the sense that they can change and they can grow. And so the conditions that are shown on that plan could be very different now.
I've actually walked it extensively with people in the business, and we've taped it off, and it's actually very close still. And that's not actually even if it has grown, I think the number of feet that we're talking about being kind of, I guess what we really need to understand is the 25-foot boundary, the 50-foot boundary, and the 100-foot boundary, and whether we are even close. Because if it's grown by 10 feet, it probably, or even 20 feet, it probably is still not going to be compliant for a lot.
Right.
And what we're looking at, there were 3 additional lots really that were carved out of this lot. I don't know if the term subdivision is correct, so I don't really want to use that term if that's not right.
Okay.
But it was broken up into, it's one lot now, 8.5 acres, and it was broken up into 3 additional lots, plus the lot that the home currently is on, which is lot 4 to the, I think that's a 4 to the far right.
Yeah, over here.
Right. So the lot 1 and lot 2 are compliant from square footage and from frontage on South Street. But if you put the 100-foot boundary, buffer zone around the perimeter of the water body, it doesn't leave you almost any land at all on that lot. So what we're trying to determine is, I don't think there's any amount of manipulation that you can do to squeeze another lot out of that lot 1. I think that's really wetlands that just can't be used.
So the construction would be on lot 2?
Lot 2, actually, what I would do, and this brings me back to talking to the engineer again about redrawing it so that it's appropriate, we would try to get 2 lots instead of 3, unless we can do a total of 3 lots.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking at this plan. Where's lot 3?
Up there. I don't even
That's
know how do they get in there?
That was a hammerhead lot that had a 50-foot approach if you raise the photo up. It had a 50-foot approach on the street here, so
That's a very long driveway.
It's a very long driveway.
it is, yeah.
Okay.
So what we thought is if this drawing was actually still quite appropriate and we could work with it, we would, kind of redraw it a little bit, possibly move, because the driveways over here were long, although to get back there, you need that distance. It's a long lot.
Well, I mean, is lot 3 even a buildable lot at this point?
I'm sorry.
Is lot 3 even a buildable lot at this point?
Right, as it's drawn, I'm not really sure.
Okay.
But the lot that I'm most concerned with is the water on lot 1, because I don't think lot 1 is even buildable as drawn.
So I mean, and maybe this is simplistic, but wouldn't the solution be to just combine lots 1 and 2?
That's kind of what we're trying to determine, is if it makes more sense to have it redrawn to only have 2 lots,
Uh-huh.
or if it makes sense to try to squeeze in 3 lots.
I mean, again, we do not provide advisory opinions.
Right.
I mean, we can walk the site, but we just don't do it. But I think you've got a handle on what the problem is. And I think any competent, there are a number of companies in Worcester County that would be able to evaluate that and probably give you a good answer, probably not for a lot of money, is my thought.
Right.
I mean, I would, I'd walk the site just because I'd like to see the extent of the wetland, and I'd like to see, are the boundaries between lots 1 and 2 well defined? I mean, are there markers, or would we be able to tell where the boundary line is between the 2?
Actually, no. The only boundary markers that are apparent are the drilled holes in the walls and there's an iron pipe. I mean, the outer boundary of the whole lot is really the only place that's
Okay.
easy to see. The rest is heavily overgrown with I mean, this is vegetative buffer here, this, the 100-foot mark, that's the 100-foot marker right there. And I don't know why they didn't complete it on this plan, but if it came down across this lot, that's the 100-foot mark that
Oh, right
has to
there.
be concerned. Yeah, it cuts.
Well, you know, you
That's-
can, I mean, like, that, obviously, that's jurisdictional. It doesn't mean you can't build within the 100-foot, but, you know, generally speaking, unless there are really extraordinary circumstances, the 25-foot no-build zone is exactly that. We don't allow building within 25 feet of the wetland area. There are very limited situations where that will be allowed. And to be honest with you, I think we may be able to allow it maybe 2 or 3 times in the last, I'm gonna say 10 years.
To build within the 25, is that
Correct.
what- Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Especially where the alternative, I think, is, I mean, if lot 1 is not buildable in its current configuration, then, and if lot 2 is vacant land, and lot 2 is vacant, right?
It's all vacant, yeah.
Then, you know, that's where you build it. That's where you put the house, it seems to me.
Right.
And I would even say, I dare say that, you know, depending on what the conditions are on lot 1, you might be able to build on lot 2 and not even have to file with the Conservation Commission.
Well, we're actually hoping to build a minimum of 2 houses.
Aha.
My son is here, and he wants to build one, and his brother wants to build the other. So
Ah.
that's what we're hoping to be able to do.
Kids, you know,
Yeah, finding property for kids to live on these days is
I understand.
possible, so.
I get that.
It's
Gotcha.
quite interesting. So, well, what we thought would be possible, if it were 2 houses, would be to utilize the back property as the footage for the land, the area, and then bring lot lines down kind of through, you know, use this as frontage for this lot and get the area up in the back, and then do the same kind of from this side and come in with 2 lots. I mean, I think it can be done for 2.
who prepared this, do you know who prepared this plan?
Yes, it was Jouer and Halman and
Oh, yeah,
Jouer and Halman in Milford or.
they're still in business, right?
They are, I've met with them, and that was the frustrating part was when I met with them, they wanted to just redraw this and then have me bring them to a conservation meeting to talk about this. But as I looked at this drawing, and read the bylaws with the buffer zone requirements and the things for wetlands. It's also a zone 3 aquifer recharge area. So I wanted to get a feel for what the,
I mean, I think at a minimum, you need to get the wetlands delineated because they haven't been delineated, if they were ever delineated in over 25 years. So that's something you need to have done.
right?
And I really do think, you know, again, we do not give advisory opinions. My suggestion is that there are competent engineering firms that would do a fine job for you and would not charge you an arm and a leg.
Right.
So, and we can provide you with some names if you want. So,
If you have those names, it would be great. I've had a couple already decline me, which is interesting. I didn't quite know why they looked at this plan and didn't want to get involved.
that's interesting.
Topper in Oxford and New England Surveying.
Those aren't the people I had in mind.
Okay, I'd love to get some
So
advice.
we can do that when the meeting is over.
Okay,
So, all right.
that'd be great.
Okay, well,
Perfect. We appreciate you taking the time though to speak with us.
oh, sure,
Nice to
absolutely.
understand it a little bit better, so, and I'm sorry we don't know the language.
That's all right, you did
Hearing those
okay.
guys talking a second ago. It's a different language.
Yeah,
You did fine. Okay, so with respect to our other business, we issued an enforcement order for 7 Maria Avenue. Do we need,
I think we do need that to be ratified.
Okay.
Yeah.
so, those of us that we went out there, yeah, thank you, take care. We went out there a few weeks ago, and this is a property that is being developed by Joseph Goodman. Towards the back end of the property, there's this, all I can describe it as it's a ravine that goes to a wetland at the bottom of the slope. What the applicant apparently has done is he's seeded it, but one good rainstorm is gonna wipe out whatever has been planted there. It seems to me that slope needs to be armored with riprap. Obviously, there was no notice of intent filed before construction began. So for that reason, we felt that an enforcement order had to be issued. We requested that the the builder submitted the notice of intent to our meeting on May 22nd. Hopefully, he will comply. But having said that, is there a motion to ratify the enforcement order for 7 Maria Avenue?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Okay. And then with respect to 26 Albert Street, Mr. Burka advises me that the enforcement order that we issued went unclaimed.
It did, yes. Well, it went, I guess, marked as undeliverable. 'Cause, I sent certified and regular, and both of them came back.
Both came back.
They both came back, yeah.
What address did you send it to?
It was the one that we had discussed. I don't. Actually, it should.
Okay.
It was sent to
Logan Huffman?
Logan Huffman, 4 Charles View Road, Suite 1 in Hopedale.
Oh, I think I have a different address for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But aside from that, so I think, and as actually after we spoke, I went online, and Mr. Huffman is a manager or has an interest in multiple businesses. So I'm sure we can find a good address for him. But my thought is that, they have, when we went up there, they have sheds and things. I mean, I don't know if they've got a trailer up there, but if they do have a trailer up there, bring a copy of the order and just tack it onto the front door,
Yeah, sure.
okay?
Yeah, that's
Because,
easy enough.
as everyone I think knows, there's an access road that was not shown on any plan. It's been used to transmit materials between the Oxford portion of that project. And that project is huge to the Auburn side. The wetland area that's there is clearly defined. It's silted in. They did put up erosion control measures after Mr. Allard went up there. But, this is not a first-time contractor. This is a well-established contractor. And I think, something needs to be done, obviously. So just, carry, if you would. Obviously, we're going to carry over 26 Albert to the next meeting. And with respect to our meeting minutes for April 10th.
I have some copies of those.
I would say more.
I'll take.
Yeah.
Original location.
I have no changes to the meeting minutes of April 10th. Any changes, any comments? In that case, can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes for April 10th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Abstain.
And abstention. Very good. Before we adjourn, I think the project on Cemetery Road, we have jurisdiction over part of it, but obviously, I think what's being proposed needs to be peer reviewed. I suspect that if we don't do it, the planning board would do it. But since this is the first board that the applicant has appeared before, I think it just makes, and especially given the scope of the work and the materials that are located on site and the condition of those materials, it makes sense, I think, to have our own consultant review this, I think, step by step. And I would imagine the planning board will probably agree with that too. So I'm trying to think who does the town use? Who is it?
They use Graves
They've
Engineering.
been using Graves?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a motion regarding referring this to a consultant?
Make a motion, we refer this to Graves Consulting.
Okay, is there,
Second.
okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye? Opposed?
Fine.
It's a vote. Okay. Is there any new business? There being none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
You beat me this time,
I
Tom.
think about 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Is
Tom's like, nothing.
there a second?
I'll second.
I said.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's a vote.